Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And what I'm recognizing this week is the people who matter show up everywhere if I'm just looking for them. And I've decided that I am going to keep looking for them. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to go first. There was a point in my life where I got kind of resentful about the fact that I seem to be the one who always has to make the call and plan the thing and decide where to go. I don't get a ton of invitations. I end up doing a lot of the inviting. I get some. Thank you to those friends who do. But at some point, I realized that I can either carry resentment about that or I can just go first. And as someone who has decided to be a leader in my own life, I just go first. And I'm doing my best to get rid of any resentment that might come with that because it feels like I'm answering some sort of call. And I know that might sound a little ethereal and a little maybe woo woo, but hey, this is my life. This is how I'm choosing to live it. And I'm choosing to share my journey with anybody who wants to listen. So today I wanted to share this post that I saw this morning from a friend of mine named Patti, who is an amazing author. She's written a couple of books and she is so creative and artistic and amazing. And I saw that she had written a long essay and I read it later, which it was beautiful and eloquent, as is she, as well as a little edgy. I love that about her. And I stopped on the first question. And I thought I would use that for my ponder today. And the question she said was, what does it mean to stay human in a world that feels so inhumane? And I started pondering that this morning. And I want to invite you to consider that as well. If you're watching this live or later, consider that for yourself. I don't think it means you have to come up with an answer for the whole world. I think it means you can decide how you do that for yourself. And because I've been studying the 15 commitments of conscious leadership, which I bet you're sick of hearing by now, but I just have to put that into context because it's become such a foundational and fundamental element for me. I'm doing my best to stay above the line, which is conscious, which means that I'm working on being open, curious, and committed to learning. Maybe especially when things trigger me or cause me to want to fall below the line, which is unconscious, closed, defensive, and committed to being right. And one of the platforms in the world right now that makes this a really great opportunity to practice these things is politics, and probably also religion. The Pope died this week, and I'm watching the amazing messages about the Pope's life, and then there are always a couple of things thrown in there. I'm not even going to go there and tell you what I'm talking about, but if you've watched anything, you probably know how the other side of the amazingness of the Pope's life has been talked about. There are always going to be different ways of looking at things, always. And so we get to decide, each of us, gets to decide how we are determining, no, I'll say how we are actually doing our lives in a way that, as Patti asks, to stay human in a world that feels so inhumane. I love the way she worded that because I'm not reading into that a declaration that the world is inhumane. I'm reading into that her sharing that she feels that it's inhumane. And it's really hard to take away people's feelings. I know as a kid, I remember parents and teachers and people saying, "Oh, don't feel that way. You shouldn't feel sad about that, or you shouldn't feel bad." And I thought that was the way you do it. Oh, I shouldn't feel that. Oh, I'm wrong. And that's not the way I see the world anymore. Please feel what you feel. And that's a whole other conversation. But my sharing of the way I'm doing my best to stay human in a world that feels so inhumane, I have a few things I'm doing, and I just wanted to share those with you today. This won't be a really long post. It'll just be, or a long episode. It'll just be my ideas. Again, as always, if you're watching this live, please add to the comments and I will address them as we go. I always like having it be a dialogue more than a monologue, yet, if you listen at all to my podcast, which by the way, we're in season 6 now, I don't have any trouble talking for a long time. So I'm looking at my notes that I wrote here today to remind me that I wanted to touch on the concept of commitment versus interest as we start. So I wonder if Patty's question could stimulate interest and also commitment. She says, what does it mean to stay human in a world that feels so inhumane? If I had interest, I'd be like, oh, I'm really interested in figuring out how to make other people be different. Or, I'll change my mind about things if it's easy. I'll do those things that I probably should do. That's interest because you'll do what it takes when it's easy. But you lose your steam and motivation when it gets difficult. So interest is one way. And commitment is another way. Commitment is doing what you say you will do, even when the emotion you set it in wears off. And so, thinking about commitments, if Patti says, what does it mean to stay human? What does it mean to stay human? And just pondering that question and recognizing that there is another way to address or impact or experience the world that, in many ways, to many people, feels inhumane. And if we just ponder that question in a way that has us go down the commitment road, we would recognize that when I'm below the line, I want other people to change. When I'm below the line, I want other people to change because I'm committed to being right and they need to see the world the way I see it. And I think that's where interest kind of falls into the gravity of that sometimes, where I'm interested in staying above the line, but it's too hard and I'm going to go back below the line because I want to just be right about things. I want to be closed, defensive, and committed to being right. If you're defensive, that means that you are reacting, you're not responding. You're reacting to other people. When you're defensive, you're reacting to what other people have said or done and to those who have gone first. When you're responding above the line, you're open, curious, committed to learning, you are going first. You're setting the tone. And then when other people react to you out of their own emotions, that's a whole different way of being. And when I do my best to stay above the line and stay in curiosity and wonder about people that are so angry about things, I see it differently. I see it a lot differently. So I'm going to get into my list of my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things I do to stay human in a world that can feel inhumane. And I'll just share them with you and you can agree or not agree. This is not really a chance to, I don't know, you can if you want to say I don't agree with you, Jodee, but that's harder to do when we're not having a conversation. And I'm way open to the conversation. Comments will be one thing, and that's great. I love that. And if you have those comments, please put them here. The best way is to have a face-to-face dialogue, in my opinion. So I'll start with that. Anyway, so how do I do that? I start every morning by reading. I'm reading books. I'm reading Substacks, I'm reading essays, so whatever it might be that I can find to read. I'm reading a couple of books now. I just finished a Richard Rohr book called The Tears of Things. I'm deciding to go back and reread. Read isn't the right term. To study, I guess, to immerse myself in A Course of Love, which is a study that I've done a couple of times a few years ago, and I'm deciding to get back into that because it causes me to remember who I want to be in this world that feels inhumane. So for me, I read something. I also do my best to be with people who support and challenge me. I had 2 amazing conversations yesterday. One, well, it doesn't matter who reached out to whom. It's the interaction that can happen when you're with somebody with whom you feel you can be real and authentic. and not have to have everything figured out and not have to be polished and not have to be, I always say on all the time, because sometimes in certain roles as people with titles or people who are supposed to be something to other people, they can feel a lot of pressure. And I love that getting together with people who might have titles or don't have titles, it doesn't matter, can feel that the space we are creating together is safe. The space we are creating together in our listening of each other can provide rich conversation and dialogue. Okay, so that's what I do. I also make something, I create something. So to stay human in this world that can feel inhumane, I create things. I'm doing a lot of painting. It turns out I'm doing a lot of commissioned dogs. And I did my own cats, as you saw last week, if you saw my Facebook post. So I'm doing animals, which is kind of interesting to me. And I'm learning that I don't enjoy portraiture, like realistic necessarily, because I get into my head about how it doesn't look perfect. I like abstract a lot more, and I have a lot more fun when I can just throw paint on a canvas and see what happens. So I love that. That's what I do. I also am doing my best to acknowledge others. I'm not great at this. I've never been great at this, and I want to get better at this. So I'm working to acknowledge others. I'm working to see people the way they want to be seen. And that goes to something called the platinum rule, which I learned many, 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 many years ago now. Dr. Tony Alessandra created a platform called the platinum rule. It was based on how we can be better communicators, but really it has to do with seeing the other person the way he or she desires to be seen, and not only the way I see them. To communicate with others the way they choose to be communicated with, not only the way I do. The golden rule is great. The platinum rule takes it a step further and says, how can I acknowledge others the way they would feel best about being acknowledged? So I'm working on that. And then curate your socials. Curate your socials. I have done that over the past couple of years. And I know it could be a little bit of a fantasy land because I tend to block or snooze people who cause my energy to go in a direction I don't choose it to go in. However, I have saved or retained a few people so that I can see contrast. I don't want to get into an echo chamber where everything I say is the same thing. In my community, everybody says the same thing and we all nod our heads. I don't want to get that immersed. I want to hone and sharpen my skills in dialogue and listening and responding instead of reacting. So there are times that I will say something or put something out there. We have so many echo chambers to jump into right now where you can be in a group or a community of like-minded people who all believe the same way. And what happens, at least in my observation, is we all nod our heads to a divisive statement and say, yes, he's a jerk. Yes, she's stupid. And then everybody nods and says, yes. And there's really nothing that changes except that we support each other in digging deeper into that hole. That's the way I see it. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. Please do you. But for me, I am choosing instead to hone, again, I'll say hone my skills of listening and discerning and dialoguing. And so the other day I posted something on a as a comment to someone else's post, and I said I'm doing my best to stay neutral about this, and that person said there's nothing to stay neutral about in this case. This is a black and white issue and it's right or wrong, and if you're not saying it's wrong, then you are saying it's right. Basically, he didn't say it exactly that way, but that's sort of how it came across. And old me would say, oh my gosh, I'm wrong. You're right. Oh my gosh, I need to change my mind. If I'm not speaking up, then I'm condoning. And all of these things that I think at some level is probably true. Yet in my field, it's not even what I wanted to say, my field of being or who I'm working on becoming, I just don't feel picking a side is the way I want to do this. I have my opinions. Definitely, I have my opinions. Oh my gosh, yes, I have my opinions. I wish people would be more open to conversations. I wish more people would be in dialogue settings instead of being steeped in what they already believe. Yes, that would be great. And it's not the world I live in right now. The world is feeling inhumane to me. So instead of picking a side and digging in, I'm doing my best to stay in the space where, and it's hard sometimes, where I can see the humans in spite of their behaviors. And I know this is not making me any friends on either of the far sides of the political spectrum. I know that. And I guess at some point you need to choose your path regardless of what other people will think. The cool part about where I find myself is I want to be proven wrong. I want to be shown something different. I want to learn because I'm above the line as much as I can, open, curious, committed to learning. If I can learn something, it means I change my mind. Learning equals change. If I haven't changed, I haven't learned. That's what I learned from John Miller and QBQ. And that could be wrong. I don't know. I could be wrong about everything. I could be completely wrong about everything. And if I am completely wrong about everything, let's talk about facts. Let's talk about what it would mean to change my mind. I'm completely open to that. And so staying in this, I'll call it a little bit more flexible space. I've been chastised for calling it the middle. There's nothing middle to do. And whatever it is, whatever this place of Gumby like. By the way, that reminds me, I have a friend who is younger than I, and I mentioned something about Gumby and Pokey, and he had no idea what I was talking about. So I know I'm showing my age right now, Gumby. But being in a space of at least some sort of emotional flexibility and mental flexibility, that's where I'm choosing. My friend Norbert and I put a podcast out on Friday called Purple Dialogue, because we're talking about what could be possible if we had a mixture of things. I guess I'm kind of wearing purple in my More Love shirt, my Life is Good shirt today. What would be available to us if we recognize that purple is a derivative of red and blue? Well, I don't know. What if? Kathy, my friend Liz, taught me about the platinum rule. I've always referred to it as Liz's platinum rule. Now I know she was the transmitter, not the source. Kathy, I love that. It doesn't matter where the information comes from. Maybe Tony Alessandra would be upset if I said that because that's where I first learned it. I'm sure it wasn't him who came up with it in the first place. But I've heard it said that what is it? If you say it 2 or 3 times, it becomes yours. So let's make it Liz's platinum rule. It doesn't matter. Really, to me, it doesn't matter. And I'm reminded then of something that I heard, I think it was Dwight Eisenhower say, it's amazing what we can accomplish if we don't care who gets the credit. And when I work on getting my ego out of things, when I work on being aware of where my ego wants to keep me safe and pull me down and keep me in a lower understanding of things, then I'm like, oh, I said that first. But this is an interesting thing to think about. Thank you for bringing this up, Kathy. I I didn't hear I didn't hear a concept that I'm using right now. I didn't make it up myself. I heard it from somebody. And the concept is what, so what, now what? And I can't remember even where I first heard it. I think it was my friend Kurt who told me about it from a friend of his. And it was as a facilitator of course material, I give the what. You, the participants, figure out the so what. What does this have to do with me? And then together we'll create the now what. What are the next steps? So what, now what? I've been doing that for a long, 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 long time in a lot of my courses. I believe it's really important for people to personalize the message or the material so that it can make sense to them. And so I've been talking about that for a long time. In my last book, Just Give a Shit, I give that as a structure of the book. I'll give you the what. At the end of each chapter, you do the so what. And then at the end, we'll have a section on now what. And one of my friends was telling me how cool she thought it was that she heard this so what and now what at a different context. And I'm like, well, at first I'm like, well, you heard it from me because I told you about it. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you get the information. It just matters that we take it in, I think. I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't care where you heard it. For me. And so, Kathy, thank you for letting me go down that little rabbit trail. Let it be Liz's platinum rule. I love that. Liz gave it to you, and you are now giving it to the world. And the world is better off for these Gumby like flexible ideas, right? Who cares where they came from? Except the person whose idea it was, and I want to be aware of that. I don't want to be accused of plagiarism. I want to give credit where credit is due as often as I can. So, in that space, let's bounce back when things don't go well, right? Bounce back. How high can I bounce? I did a talk a few years ago now, a 2-minute talk, and it was in response to my failed TED Talk in 2016. I messed it up. I forgot what I was going to say. I thought I had to memorize it. I forgot my script. I blah, 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 blah. And I did a 2-minute talk in response to my failed TED Talk. And it was something like, the higher you are, the higher you are, the higher, maybe the higher you are when you're below the line, that can sound kind of weird, but when you're closed, defensive, committed to being right, and you have a high position in a hierarchy, the higher you are, the further you fall. So it's either going to be a splat or a bounce back. And so it's either the bigger you splat or the higher you bounce back. And that's the way I choose to look at things when I make mistakes and when I learn from them, because mistakes are simply a way of learning. I want to be really aware that I bounce back and I don't splat. And I splatted for a while after that TED Talk. I took that pretty hard for far too long. I wallowed and I lingered and I stayed stuck. But eventually I bounced back. And I recognized that the way I thought I needed to do a TED Talk is probably not the way a TED Talk needs to be done. I thought it needed to be memorized word for word, and I don't do well in that way. As you can tell, I'm I'm very emergent in the way I share messages. And now, as a facilitator, I'm doing a keynote on Friday for an organization. They will find out, if they don't know already, that I'm not scripted. And so I'll have slides and they will be prompts, but I will go where the energy needs to go in the room, and I will share my stories that have a point. My mentor James always says, share a story, make a point. I will help them understand things. I'll do the what, so what, now what. If I don't put it on slides, at least I'll do it in my mind. I'll give the what. They get to figure out the so what. What does this have to do with them? And then the now what will be, so what are we going to do now? What's going to happen as a result of this? What I always ask my audiences when I'm asked to do a keynote, what do you want people to know, be, feel, think, do, and have as a result of the message? And by the way, I got that from another mentor of mine, Gerald Hammond, who put that in a deck of cards called the No Brainer, K-N-O-W, No Brainer, which I used for years and years and years. So Gerald, thank you for that prompt. What do you want people to know, be, feel, think, do, and have as a result of the keynote, the interaction, the leadership opportunity, the parenting? I mean, what do you want people to know? What is the outcome or the objective that you'd like to have them experience? Have you asked them? What did they want to experience? What is it that they care about? So if we are committed to something over being simply interested in it, then I think we're a little more flexible, because then we'll say, I'm committed to having relationships with people that allow me the opportunity to flex, that allow me the opportunity to learn, and that allow me to continue growing. And does that sound like an ego thing? Maybe. There's still ego. I'm still human. We're still here. We're not spirit as long as we're walking on the earth. But we can bring spirit energy to things, I think. And so those are my tips, I guess. They're what I do. I'm open to hearing yours too. How do we, or what does it mean to stay human in a world that can feel very inhumane? Thank you to Patti Dye for that prompt. And thank you all for being here. Thanks, Kathy, for sharing a comment. And for anybody who's watching live or later, go and watch these or take in maybe my podcast if it occurs to you that it's important. Share it with people if you think they'd like it. I'd like to get more viewers and followers. I'm working on figuring out how to do that so that I can selfishly have more interaction with people, because that's what helps me grow too. So on YouTube, Get Real with Jodee is my YouTube channel, and you can find this wherever podcasts are, as a podcast. Uh, there are other resources on my website, jodeebach.com. Just go there and check out, see if anything feels right to you, and then follow that hunch. And as always, find a way this week to get real, even get more real. We'll talk again. Thanks.